Hi, everyone. I have some big news that I want to share with you before we get to our podcast today. I wanted to let you know that Path 11 TV is actually launched. However, we are going to be throwing a party on November 11th at 11 a.m. with Suzanne Northrup. She's an evidential medium, and she's going to be talking with us about mediumship and after-death communication on November 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then after that, Suzanne has agreed to give people who sign up for a yearly membership a free gallery reading over Zoom. So the readings necessarily aren't guaranteed, depends on how many people sign up. But once you sign up for your annual membership for $59, we are going to email you the Zoom link to enter into the gallery reading over Zoom with Suzanne on 11/11 at 12 p.m. So we are really, really excited about this, and we decided to discount the annual membership by 40% off the regular price until our launch on November 11th. Once November 12th hits, the price is going back up, so I would really love for you to take advantage of your annual membership for $59. With that, you are going to get free access to a gallery reading with Suzanne Northrup. And you can check out her website if you haven't heard of her yet, SuzanneNorthrup.com. And if you sign up before November 11th, you will be able to enter into that Zoom room with her, and hopefully you will get your own reading. So head on over to path11tv.com. You can register for that annual membership now for $59 and start watching all the content that we have. There's some wonderful stuff on there. I know you're going to enjoy it if you love listening to our podcast. Oh, and by the way, if you've just been listening to the podcast, we have the video podcast for Path 11 over on Path 11 TV. So you can't see them anymore on YouTube, but you can watch them for free at path11tv.com. All right, guys, let's get to our show. Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Path 11 podcast. You better hold on to your seats for this conversation because I have a feeling it's going to be a really good one. I have Peta Morton, who is a professional Reiki and mindfulness teacher, author, and speaker with me today. So we are going to go really in depth, probably with speaking about Reiki, our experiences. You have to hear some of the stuff that she is studying and doing that is just going to blow you away. She's a regular contributor at the Science and Non-Duality SAND conference. Her short online documentaries, The Geometry of Love and Imaging the Hidden Geometry of Reiki. Like what? I can't wait to talk to her about this. Originated from a series of spontaneous mystical experiences and offers thought-provoking insights into the mechanics of consciousness and energies which normally pass unseen and silent. Peta is from the UK and is currently living in a region of France, which I'll let her pronounce because I can't do that. And she also recently wrote a book called Ancient Teachings for Modern Times. And there was a chapter in this book that I absolutely love that incorporates the word, so our language, the sound that comes out of our mouths, and tying that to like vibration and how that can heal and what is actually happening when we give words breath. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Peta. How are you today?
Oh, I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great show. Yeah, really glad to be here, especially in these very interesting times that we're in.
It is. And I have to ask you a question, too, before we even get into some of the content. But when I was reading your book, I noticed that you had a couple of authors and a couple of people, who reviewed it and, gave their claim to how great it was. And one of them is Mark Serto from the Triad Mind. We had him on the show. He was episode 71.
I must listen to that.
Yeah, he's the sound engineer for the Monroe Institute. And Mike and I, we were doing a screening of one of our films, and he happened to be on site. And it was the first podcast that I ever did where I was sitting across from someone. And he had this whole meditation portal that we talked about. And, you know, he was really into the sounds, the binaural beats. I mean, just everything. And he was an amazing man. And I was like, oh my God, how does Mark know Peta? And you also, I just interviewed Mark Gober. We had him on for both of his books. And I'm like, look at these connections. Two of these people are reading Peta's books. I've had them on the podcast. So I was just curious to know, how do you know these guys?
Do you know, Mark Gober, I met at SAND, at the Science and Knowledge. We were both speaking there. And Mark Serto, do you know, Facebook, I think. Originally, it's really funny because we were chatting this morning. We were tapping away to each other this morning because we were both feeling a bit freaked out by all this this use of, like, you know, the way that propaganda is being used, and you know, in a very quite manipulative way. And so we were really sort of intrigued by that. And it's like, well, how can we work with this? You know, how can we turn this round, and what can we create from there? So yeah, and I've been really interested in Mark's work for a long time, because I followed all the stuff from, you know, the Monroe Institute, and, you know, done various outer body courses and things like that. You know, I had a little taste of spontaneous outer body experiences probably about 10 years ago. I had a whole succession of them, and then spent about 18 months being totally obsessed about getting back into that. It was like, oh, this is just the most wonderful, expansive state. And yeah, I became a bit, I read everything and listened to everything, and, you know, went on endless courses to explore those sort of outer body states, and not just outer body states, but other states of consciousness. Yeah, and then thought, actually, it's quite useful being in a body on this planet and doing pulling the two things together, you know, having that wider awareness. Yeah. And actually, but being very embodied, you know, I think that's a bit of a danger with spiritual people, is they all become so, you know, light and love and very airy-fairy, that actually some of the practicalities go by the wayside. So,
yeah, well, yeah, I'd like you to give our listeners a little bit more of your background too, because I know that you had a life-threatening illness that kind of made you reevaluate your approach to life. It sounds like you've always kind of been a seeker, and like you said, you've been dabbling in a lot of this different stuff. But didn't you also have a background of being a police officer too? Did I read that somewhere?
Yeah, I wasn't always a seeker. This is new to me. I'm on a learning curve, like a very steep learning curve at the moment. It's only been the last 10 years, really. I really did have to, you know, like so many people on this path, you know, I had to bump up against that wall and start really looking hard at what I wanted from life, and where I was going, and why I was going, you know, why I was behaving, how I was behaving, and where my priorities were. But yeah, no, I wasn't, I don't think I was even, I think I was probably always quite intuitive. But I wasn't, I didn't feel anything, you know, I was my body and my thoughts and my emotions, and not very numb to that and anything a little bit subtle. And, but at the same time, yeah, I policed for probably 13, 14 years. I was military intelligence before that. So I've always had and I was been an estate agent. You know, I've had these very left brain sort of sensible jobs. And then I had this run-in with cancer, and all sorts of other nonsense that comes when, you know, your life starts unraveling, you know, financial stuff and bouts of depression and stress and, you know, all that stuff. But actually, the policing is not so far removed.
No, not at all.
Because you're working in those. What fascinates me about this whole consciousness Reiki experience is like what goes on with our thoughts and our emotions. And when you're policing, you're in these really highly charged emotional environments, like it's like instead of dipping in and out of trance, when you're doing a session, you're walking with a foot between worlds. You walk into these environments that, 1 minute you're in a domestic violence situation, everybody's screaming, and you've got to learn how to just with your presence to calm things. And then half an hour later, you'll be sat with somebody telling them their child has just died. Or, so I've spent a long time sitting with people who are having really strong emotional experiences and being able to sort of help them. I've never been this policewoman at the side of the road with a speed camera. That's not my bag. It's always been there as a, helping people in difficult moments. That's been my thing. And just understanding how people tick, they fascinate me. What goes on in here and what goes on in here. And I think with my practice now, what's really, it's been really, really interesting is just understanding how our thoughts and emotions really shape our entire lives, really. It's not just about making decisions, but we really, on a subtle level, we really change our environment, our atmosphere,
Yeah, I mean, I've worked a lot with military personnel and, used to run a wellness center for combat vets using acupuncture and Reiki. And I have to tell you that, out of all the police officers and, military people that I have worked with, their intuition is so strong because they're reading energy constantly. They're reading the nonverbals, they are feeling, they're using their whole bodies, to be that sensor for like their lives and protection and protecting others. So I have found that those two worlds they look to be very separate, but they are not at all. That's been my experience. And so, through your battle with cancer, because, so many people that is such a common diagnosis that many, many people are experiencing and have experienced. I think that I just feel like I'm getting a sense to ask you to talk a little bit more about that and how you kind of work through that, how you came to spirituality and Reiki and mindfulness. And, here you are writing books, Ancient Teachings for Modern Times, and studying the geometry of healing, the sacred geometry of all this. So how did the cancer actually leap you into a world that seemed polar opposite from where you were coming from?
It was such a gift. Mm-hmm. It was what a great rabbit hole to fall down. I think once you do sort of open that door a tiny little bit, it's just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I think the thing that really did it for me, I remember lying in bed with my two girls the night of my diagnosis and thinking, oh my God, I might not actually see them grow up. I might not be there for them as a mum or, and it made me really start looking at what I appreciated in life, what I valued. And it wasn't, at the time I was an estate agent, it wasn't chasing the next biggest commission, what chateau can I sell next? Because I used to sell these big posh houses. And what I realized, it was the little things. And when I started, I realized something really had to change. I really, really had to make some changes in my way of thinking and my way of behaving. I hadn't realized to what extent my whole way of perceiving life, really. You wouldn't want to bump into me in the supermarket, and say, hi, how are you? Just don't ask me that question because I'd have told you and it was never good. I was always that moaning Minnie, so you'd say, how's it going? And I'd say, oh my God, there's this happened and that happened. And I was always focused on what was wrong, constantly focused on what was going wrong in my life rather than just this awesome opportunity that we have being alive and being a body and a soul in a body on a planet. And it's just the most amazing experience. And so I think it really gave me a new way of looking at at life. And so that was kind of a good wall to bump into. And then I discovered Reiki fairly shortly after that. Once I had actually had my physical recovery, but I was still a bit, quite screwy emotionally, really, and very focused on very fear-based, very constantly worrying about money and what people thought of me and all those sorts of things. And then I just started reading, with the bog standard law of attraction books and, a bit of Deepak Chopra and, the very basic stuff. And it was so useful, so useful. So I ended up, the more I looked, the more I read and the more I understood and the more I practiced, I learned Reiki, and it opened a whole new world to me, and I realized I'm not just this physical body, that I actually felt energy moving. And I, really worked on my sensitivity. So, today I could be lying in bed and I'll feel a certain vibration. I'll get I've got an app on my iPhone, and I'll go, oh, where's Mars right now? And really becoming so aware of reading vibrant. It's like interpreting vibration, really. That's all we do, whether it's a fast moving or it's slow moving. And I spent a lot more time looking at what was going on inside of me, why, and learning to take responsibility for the things I was thinking and feeling and creating, which I had no idea that I was doing that. They were just thoughts as far as I was concerned. I had no idea that I was actually, beginning to actually create a life with this constant negative thinking. Not always negative thinking, but, I just realized I was, just becoming a lot more aware of what was going on in here, and learning to be okay with being with that and create from that place. It's like, okay, I don't have to fight it. I can just allow it to be there. And, when you bump into something that is not comfortable, instead of just, running away from it or distracting myself in some way or pouring another glass of wine or going shopping or, watching or blaming somebody else, I would actually, I learned enough to actually be present with it and start asking questions about, well, what was my role in this? How did I contribute to this? And then just starting to experiment and realizing that, you can create with your mind and with your emotion. And, you have those little wins, don't you? And those little series of synchronicities, and you go, this is really cool. It works. And then you bump into the thing that you created that you hadn't meant to create. And it's like, oh no. So it's like being a kid in a playground. It's, I've just discovered this whole subtle world that's just mind-blowing. So that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to make something really, really easy for people, really. Yeah. I really wanted something that my mum could pick up, because it's so cool. It's like, nobody taught me. Why didn't I learn this at school?
No, right? It's like, yeah. How come
and it's so easy, and it's our natural state of being. Mm-hmm. And I'd shut mine off. I'd totally shut myself down. I didn't want to feel anything uncomfortable. So instead of having something like, you'd have this, all it is, it's a sensation, really. You'd have this vibration inside and you'd say, well, that doesn't feel very nice. So you push it away instead of saying, well, what's this showing me? What do I want to, if I don't like this thing, well, what is it that I want to move towards then? If this is showing me that this is unhealthy or uncomfortable, then what's my belief about that? Why am I feeling that way? Is it true? So all that whole discussion that you have with yourself about why you think what you're thinking. And it was so useful and so easy. I just wanted to share it so that people didn't have to go through all the, it took me a long time. And it's like, well, couldn't I just put it into, it's not a very, It's not a very technical book. It's not a deep spiritual text. So if anybody's ever looking to go right into it, it's quite multi-layered. It's one of those books that sometimes things jump out at you and you see new things. You know, you read the simple, but then there's layers that I don't know how that happened, because I don't feel it sort of came from a higher place when I was writing it. So it's a very basic book, you know, but it's the book I wish I had when I started out. I wish I'd had somebody to hold my hand. And I didn't want to go to a monastery or to go and study. I'd love to go and have the time to go and study, you know, really sit with some masters now. But at the time, if you'd said, you know, go and study with a Christian mystic or go and study Buddhism, I'd have gone, oh my God. You know, it freaked me out. And so I just wanted something that wasn't very gaudy, you know.
Yeah.
Albeit we're touching on the sacred, you know, totally now. I'm very comfortable with that now, but I wasn't when I started. And Yeah,
I really want to focus on, I have some of my notes here on chapter 5, the word and, you know, giving thing. I usually talk to my clients too that have held some really heavy stuff, you know, that they've gone through in their life. And one of my teachers had told me, and now I pass this along, that it's very important that we give things breath. And then when I read your chapter on chapter 5, the word, I was like, oh my God, she totally explains what this means. It was awesome. But before we get into chapter 5, can you give our listeners just a little bit of an overview of what they could expect, you know, why they would want to pick up the book? What do you have in there? How are you kind of outlining it? And what tools are you giving the reader?
I think it gives us, well, first of all, an idea as to like the mechanisms of consciousness, you know, how energy moves. And when I say energy, it's really consciousness. It's mind. It's how mind and thought and emotion all combine, and how that interacts with I spend a very brief bit at the beginning talking about the links between mind and body and matter, and how actually they're not so separate at all. They're all different states of the same energy, the same substance. You know, there's this juicy substance in the universe, and we've got a myriad of names for it. But it's all different states of the same thing, just moving at different rates, different cycles, different speeds, different, you know, sometimes it's dense and sometimes it's very spacious and light and you can't see it. So I explain a little bit about that because I find it's helpful, because you can actually start feeling that in action. And then I spend quite a lot of time looking at how our thoughts and our words and our actions or our non-actions, as is often the case, our procrastination, how they really influence this substance and our collective, you know, how they impact us and the people around us. And so, you know, some of the questions, some of the things that go on inside, it's really a book about becoming self-aware. And just starting to notice, you know, what is that inner dialogue? What am I telling myself? I had no idea. I'd never noticed the stories I had in my head. I'd never noticed what I was saying to people when I was speaking to them. You know, and the things I kept repeating over and over and over again, and just complete nonsense. And so I'm constantly anchoring things into my reality that I really didn't want. And also how to work as a community. And I think that's super, I think that's, you know, kind of where we're heading towards, really. It's, you know, learning to be much more compassionate with ourselves, with other people. And I think we're moving to a period where we will be working a lot more closely with other people. And it's powerful stuff. You know, when people are consciously aware of what they're creating and they're doing it as a group, it's like it's magic, literally.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about chapter 5, the word, because it's not only about kind of, you know, when we're talking about law of attraction and this concept of like, you know, careful what you wish for, what you ask for, what words are you putting out, what are you affirming? But you also talk a lot about vibration and the sound, and how I took a couple of notes here where you said vibrations make complex geometric patterns. And I wanted to ask more about that, and how you also were talking about, the sound that's coming out of my mouth right now comes out in a spherical form, not linear. So, you were kind of talking about sound waves in this chapter too, and how I wanted to learn a little bit more about that, the waves of that, and how there's a huge spiritual component behind the breath. So this is like, I want more of this. So, and you start this chapter off by saying, what you speak, you claim. And then you make the reader think about not only just the words that we're saying, but the vibration, and what vibration and sound and what that does to the molecules and the cells in our bodies. I mean, it's just fascinating to me. So I want to learn more about what you know about these complex geometric patterns, what is happening as I'm speaking to you right now, and what we're saying to others, and how can we get our listeners to be more mindful and really kind of soak in what you talk about in chapter 5.
Wow. I was frantically thinking, what did I say? What did I write in chapter 5? So what was in chapter 5? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sound is just, I think everything is based on sound. Mm. The world is founded on sound. It's just a lot of the time we only hear, and we only hear a tiny percentage of this spectrum of acoustics that are available to us. Every sound that we make creates a vibration, and it moves energy. And you see it, if you stand next to, you stand next to water and you talk really loudly, you would see it. Or if you're breathing outside on a cold day, you're talking outside, you see that there's something going on. We don't normally see it on a hot day. You wouldn't see air moving. When you have when you talk, we have the impression that we have these sound waves. You talk about waves, and it's like a bubble that comes out in 3D all around you. It's multidimensional. It's not a flat. It's not a flat thing. So, have you ever heard of cymatics?
Cymatics, possibly. It sounds a little familiar, but
okay.
I don't think I delved into it. But maybe explain it a little bit more, and it might ring a bell.
Cymatics is the study of sound and vibration made visible, and you've probably seen it on YouTube. And you have they used to do it with sand on what they call a classy plate. So you'd have the flat plate, and they would they'd bow music. They bow a violin, or they play something, and then you see these geometric patterns.
Patterns, yes.
And what's happened today is they've made this. It's become more technical. We've evolved. So today you can do it with a little water dish. A little dish. You can put it on a speaker. You can do it yourself at home. Try it. It's great fun. You put a little bit of water in the bottom of a dish. Or you can use a lab instrument like a Cymoscope or a cymatic, some sort of cymatics viewer. But basically, all it is it's a dish of water in a container, and you can plug it in with an aux lead into a sound system, or you could put it on top. I quite often just stick it on a speaker, one of these little portable speakers. So, and then you can play sounds through your speaker, and when you speak, there's a vibration. So, you see lots of people doing it with music, and what happens is the water molecules, it's the membrane, it's the surface membrane of the water. What happens is with each vibration, it makes these geometric patterns. So you can rig yourself up to your speaker. You can record yourself speaking or singing, and then plug that into the speaker. And what happens is it makes these beautiful geometry, or not beautiful, which is that's kind of telling. It makes these geometric patterns, and they're just stunning to watch. So you can do it with music, and you can do it with singing, and with your voice. And I've been playing with it with Reiki, because just through, I don't know how it happened, I started working with people on Skype. And for some reason, when we work on Skype, we hear these sounds of energy moving during the session. So what happens is you'll be sat there talking like we are now, and the minute we start sharing Reiki, we hear these like zoom, zoom, zoom come through, or they come like really loud through the speakers of my home computer. It's not at all technical. It's just I'm sat here with an antiquated computer, and it makes these really loud noises. And they vary depending on the person and the session. And so I've been plugging those sounds in to find out, well, what's going on in these sessions. Sometimes it's very rhythmic and it's very relaxing, and it's like a washing machine going round. And yet sometimes you'll hear like beep, 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 or you get a real staticky sound, where, especially when people are stressed, or they're when they're anxious, with people with PTSD, or when they're really unhealthy, people with cancer quite often, or bone issues. What you find is it's almost like you don't get a regular sound at all. You don't get it's not a specific frequency that you'd have on some of the other sessions. You get this like static sound, like you've got a radio that's stuck between stations. I had a really interesting experience actually with a student. We were doing some distance. I was teaching her to do distance healing, and I said, "Okay, you're going to share some Reiki with me, and we'll record it on Skype, and we'll see what happens." And just before we met online, and I've been doing sessions all morning, and all very rhythmic and very comfortable and very relaxed. And literally 2 or 3 minutes before we went online, I had a phone call saying my dad had been taken into intensive care. And then I had to go and teach. And the minute she started sharing Reiki with me, all you could hear was like... and lots of really interesting, lots of light that was flashing on the session, lots of color changing. The computer picks up stuff that we kind of see psychically, you see it intuitively. And Skype picks up all manner of stuff that it's not within our range of, it's on the fringes of what we're aware of. And I think psychics probably tap in, they've probably just got a slightly wider range of what they pick up on. So what I've learned is every time we say something, we're kind of making a bridge between what has been going on internally, what we've been thinking. So you've got that internal one. The minute you express it, it's the first manifestation of something that's coming out into the external world. So it starts with that inspiration, that internal impulse. Where does that thought come from? In a lot of the old textbooks, the old teachings, they say that there are 3 stages of matter. There's fine matter, fine gross matter, which is thought. It still creates a shape and a vibration. Then you have word, which is just a more tangible sense of matter. There's something going on. Thought's still part of the physical world, but you don't see it. It's there, but it's much more subtle. It still exists. It's still part of our world. And that's why, telepaths, people who are telepathic and psychic can pick up on, they feel that subtle vibration. But when you speak something, it's the first time that it becomes tangible and material. It's the first real evidence we have of something, and it's such a powerful tool for creation, for influencing people. And you can tell when you speak to people, whether they're being authentic or not. You feel it. It's not just you see it. You feel when somebody speaks the truth. I'm fascinated by all these politicians at the moment. You just know who's trustworthy and who's not. You feel there's a resonance about when somebody stands there really being authentic and speaking their truth. It's not just you hear it, you feel it. They shape the space around them. They shape this. So what I've been doing with the Reiki stuff is I've been recording these crazy sessions. So I don't know. It's like, what do you do all day, Mum? It's like, well, I sit there and I listen to these sounds coming out the speaker. I sit there staring at people on Skype, and you hear all these crazy sounds that come out of the computer, and I record them. And then we've been putting them through these cymatics viewers. And what you can do is you put a little light over the top, and you can film what's going on the water below, and you see them moving in real time. Loads of little vortices, like vortices everywhere, very much based around the toroid, or the yin-yang, that yin-yang and the different polarities. So yeah, I'm still playing with it. We've not done anything hugely scientifically. I've been experimenting for about 10 years with it now, but seeing how emotions shape these things as well, these patterns. When people are in a good place, it usually produces these beautiful geometric patterns. You've heard of Masaru Emoto, and his water crystals, and it's very much the same thing. I think when we see these water crystals or even snowflakes, I actually think what's being captured is what's in the air around us all the time. That just goes unnoticed. It's like the atmosphere around us. And I think it's what we feel. When you walk into a room and there was a fight in there 5 minutes ago, that those people in the room or behind you, there's somebody looking at you, and you can't see them, but there's... I think that's what we're picking up on. I think we're picking up on these vibrational patterns that are surrounding us all the time. But with this, just by shining a light on a dish of water, you can actually see what's going on. And you can see what happens, I think, to the water molecules in our body.
Wow. And what are you plugging it into? I want to get one of these things. I want to try this. I need one of these. So are you just using a regular camera or? My setup's really, John Stuart Reid, has a brilliant website called Cymoscope.com. Okay. And he uses, he's got some really sophisticated lab equipment. And I know he's been putting things, he's been working with Rupert Sheldrake and Merlin Sheldrake recently, putting things in pressure chambers so they can, make sure there's no influence from barometric pressure changes. And, they've been getting very rigorous with it. But you can buy a very basic Cymoscope setup for cymatic setup for €100 or $100, pounds, whatever you're in. Right. But you can literally just put a dish of water on a speaker, just rest it on top of a speaker and plug sound or Reiki in or whatever it is any audio recording that you have, just stick an aux lead into it, and you have to learn to fiddle a bit with the volume. I'm really not an expert at that. There are some great people like Sean Pikasik and David Shearmeyer, a couple of guys out there. They are really getting to grips with cymatics work. And Dave Shearmeyer has done some amazing stuff, actually. He started doing this thing. He puts bubbles. He blows a bubble. You've got this dish of water here, and what he does is he'll blow, like with kids' bubbles, and he thickens them up with a bit of glycerin to make sure they don't pop. And so they have this bubble over this dish of water, and he shines a light through from different angles so you can actually see what's going on, and makes the room a bit dark, and just films. He's doing it with just with an iPhone or an Android or whatever. It's not technical. But what you see is these, instead of having these flat patterns, these flat geometric patterns, what you see is these 3D, vortices and lots of intricate lines, and this geometry is moving. It's almost like watching the Northern Lights. Wow. I found that really, really interesting, because as we're doing, especially using the sounds from Reiki sessions, what I'm realizing is we're kind of seeing the processes of what's going on inside our bodies, I think, at the same time. It's it's not just a sound. There is an effect.
It's moving. These things are moving energy in a certain way. So I've become really, and also I think I'm pretty sure, I can't say hand on heart, definitively, but I'm pretty sure the planets are just, they move too, and they have these cyclical movements. They create a vibration as they're moving. They're just much bigger, slower cycles. And some of the sounds that come through, I've started looking at people's natal charts when I do sessions now as well. And I'm starting to see common themes, when I've looked for people a while back that all had what the old medical astrology books would have defined as Saturn conditions, lots of contraction, lots of cold, lots of dense, bone issues, skin issues. And they all had similar frequencies in their session, and they all had made similar sounds, and quite often similar emotional states as well. Wow. And I want to do another one with Mars is pretty pronounced at the moment. Mars is in Aries, so we've got like this fiery, angry energy or action-based energy it's pretty evident on the planet at the moment. And I'm kind of curious as to see whether that would I'd be hearing a lot more high-pitched, fiery, the fast, high-pitched, because when an energy moves fast, when things cycle faster, they have a higher frequency. Saturn is cold and slow and dense and downward moving. It's much closer to the physical. It makes things manifest. And when you have this hot energy, it stirs things up, and it moves upwards, and its heat rises, and so it goes up to the head, and then you get a lot more, lots of migraines and inflammation and things like that. So I'm just really interested to see how these sounds actually move energy, and I think that's kind of what's going on within the body and within our meridians, and we're just seeing the energy moving in different ways. It might be very dispersed, and then we're all a bit dreamy, a bit foggy, and a bit scattered with our thinking. We're not very precise, because all our energy's, open and spacey, but much more connected to that spiritual part of ourselves.
Yeah, and Reiki is like so experiential too, that if you can actually hear stuff through the sound or show a client what the water is doing, it almost is like allows people to see what they're feeling come to manifestation, because Reiki to me, with my clients is such an internal experience, this is so cool. Hey, would you like to try some Reiki together, since we're both trained in Reiki, to see if the sound waves might do anything?
I don't know how it would work on this. We can try. I don't know how it would work on here. I find it on Zoom, and I've been speaking to various technicians to see how that works. When you see, I don't know if you've noticed on here, you keep getting those flashes of light. Yes, yeah. That I see a lot in the Skype, and sometimes the colours, we get these colours that come through, that we'll get greens, bright greens and oranges, and, there have been times I've actually lost my client. I've sat there going, it's like, or we talk about, in Reiki, you talk about this great bright light. And I think we actually see it, the computer picks it up. Yeah. It's like, sometimes it's like walking down a catwalk, with all the cameras flashing. And
I'm sure you've had enough sessions where you're like, what you're doing is you're kind of picking up on this information, this data. I'm sure some of the skeptics might be saying like, oh, well, that's probably just, the radio frequency waves that are going through the air that day, and how much traffic, or, somebody will look to debunk this and say, well, that flash of light is just because, if you're moving back and forth or left and right, the light.
Yeah, and the sun's moved through the window, and
Sure. But I think, where you are and kind of like collecting your information and data is that you've had enough repeatable experiences that it's starting to be something, like you're starting to notice patterns.
What we can definitely say is that there's a definite link to consciousness, because when we're talking like this, that nothing happens. It's silent. And it only starts the minute I make a conscious decision to share Reiki. So I can see that it wasn't, we were talking like this before, and we've done enough practice where, because sometimes that people have said that, you sit quietly, and then the on Skype, it's a bit antiquated. And actually, I like that about that. That's why I use Skype a lot, because it is antiquated and it's not they haven't got sophisticated filters. And actually, I want to hear the interference and the sound. It's telling us something. And it gets, what I would say with this, it might not work on this platform. I don't know. I've never tried it, because it doesn't seem to come through very well on things like Zoom and Google Hangouts. And the texts that I've spoken to think it's to do with the algorithms and the filters. It's much better buffered to cut out this disturbance. But it's picking it. Skype seems to amplify a sound that's present. It's very subtle, but what it does is, I think, it seeks that sound, and then it's like, especially when it's quiet, it seeks to make it louder and make it louder and make it louder so that we can hear. So I find it's very useful, actually. It gives us some really useful information. And I definitely see there's themes with people's emotional states, or certain clients, they come, and every time I sit with a particular client, I might not sit with them from 1 month to the next, and yet they always make this very specific, it's like, oh, that's Julie's noise. You just know. Autistic. I have an autistic boy that I work with, and lots of concentration problems. And every time I sit with him, it's like really, really high pitched and really fast. It's like tick, 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 tick. It's like almost somebody's got clackers out, doing that tick, 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 tick. And it's like, no wonder he gets distracted. If he's got all this data that's coming in. And I think that's what it is. It's just vibrational data that somehow it picks up. But yeah, I'll try, but I have no idea what will happen on this.
Okay, well, we'll try it. If it's uneventful and it's silent, I don't know, we'll either cut it out, or Mike can put music over it, or so I would like to also send to you. Is that okay?
Yeah,
sending to each other.
Definitely up for that.
And it'll be interesting, because we have been using the Streamyard site for the simple fact that it's great connection. Like right now, I hear nothing. Like you sound perfectly pure and clear. I'm not getting any feedback. And I know what you mean. We have done a lot of interviews over Skype, and you can hear a little bit of like background noise. So, I mean, I just want to try it. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, what we could do if this doesn't work is, if you do want to, we could meet on Skype. Because I know that would work, and it's much better without headphones and mic'd up. You just leave it without all the filters. Yeah, you just really try and get rid of the filters.
Yeah,
and then it's really, so if it doesn't work here, we could always
hop over to Skype.
To Skype, and then I'll leave the techies to patch it.
I know, poor Mikey's probably like, oh no, what are they doing?
But I don't know how this will work. We'll see.
Okay, so we'll just kind of go into our space. My intent is to send Reiki to you. You're going to be sending Reiki to me, and maybe we can just do it for 30 seconds to a minute. Is that long enough?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, all right. So just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, no, let's go. Let's play. Yeah, you can hear it very briefly, very faintly, but it's very faint. But, you won't mistake it on Skype. And it links to, there are days when it's very discreet, and I think there are just genuinely days when the energy is very still. And back when we had a lot of solar flares, that was a really fascinating time. It was literally like somebody was driving a bulldozer through the house. It was like, and the kids would be upstairs in the bedroom, and Mum's working again. And you'd literally hear these like really loud noises, and the whole house would vibrate. Wow. And what was really interesting about that, you could actually make the correlations between it was actually at the time, you pick it up at the time the solar flare took place, because you could check them on NASA's space weather site, or TSIS. There's these people that monitor space weather. And it was actually at the time the flares occurred on the sun, not the time we were feeling them at the Earth's magnetic field. 2 or 3 days later, when it reaches Earth, we were actually picking these sounds up at the time they were happening, which I found was that's really kind of curious.
Yeah. Well, I say you have opened up a world for me. I might want to contact you personally and have a one-on-one session with you. Maybe we'll do it through Skype. And if you don't mind, I'll record it and I can share it with my audience, because we're running out of time and we have another guest to bring on. But you've opened up a world for me. And I think it was 3 years ago, I had a session with a medium, an intuitive that I highly respect. I think she does really good work. And she said to me, you got a book coming. She goes, it's all on sound waves.
Oh, yum.
And as we're talking, and I was thinking, everybody says they're going to write a book. Sure, I've always wanted to write a book. What would I write a book on? And then she said sound waves. And I was like, yeah, I don't think that's right. I don't think she got that one right.
Well, I just got truth bumps. That's what I call them.
I don't know.
My truth bumps.
Maybe you and I are going to have to stay connected, and I might have to really start researching this a little bit more and collecting some data with all of my clients, because I love sound. I love music. Music is like part of my life. I cannot live without it. And I was doing at the time a Reiki meditation music class with a sound healer, and he is also a vibroacoustic therapist, and he has this beautiful 22-string harp guitar. I don't know, he got it shipped to him. It was, handmade, and he plays this beautiful music while we're delivering Reiki, and just the way that the people feel after these classes, it's like none other, because his sound that comes out of that guitar just transports people on top of the Reiki, on top of the essential oil. So I was thinking, well, I really am fascinated by the whole sound healing aspect. But as I'm thinking about it, she wrote it down on this purple piece of paper. It said sound waves. And I was like, and that
it's sound moving. And for me, I kind of have this idea, and again, it's not something technical, but I have this idea that there is this pure frequency that is love, that is, love and compassion, that is what the universe, it's like that's our natural state. And everything else is, just energy moving from that central point. And I think what happens is when you connect to that frequency of Reiki, everything else, it's like hitting a tuning fork. And everything else, it's not that you control it. I don't see it that you play this particular frequency and this frequency will do this thing, because different containers, you could play the same frequency in two different containers and it would have a different effect. You see that when you play an instrument, if it's narrow, it doesn't make the same sound. So I don't think it's as simple as we're all so unique. But somehow I think, Reiki, and not just Reiki, but, that coming back to your center, to your true self, that it's like really is the basis of the universe, of the cosmos, of everything. And I literally think when we connect with that stuff, we're just hitting a tuning fork and everything else goes. And the body goes, I know what this is. I know how this feels. I feel more spacious. I feel lighter. I feel more expansive. It's like, this is what I'm made of, really. Yeah. We recognize it even on a molecular level, and everything sort of reorganizes itself to create that space.
Well, this conversation was so much fun. I loved it. I love speaking to you. I am sure our listeners, I'm sure you're busy right now. You're probably going to get even busier because I am sure all of my listeners are going to be like, Peta, I want a Skype session. I want to hear my vibration and my sound. So just be prepared. They're going to be calling you. So why don't you let them know how they can reach you for these Reiki sessions? And we live in New York, so we have a lot of listeners here in the States and stuff. And so
well, I work all over the world. PetaMorton.com is the best. It's PetaMorton.com. You've got all my contact details there. I constantly lurk on Facebook and things as well. I would just say to your listeners that we haven't got away yet. I know it's coming. It's a tiny little vision that I had years ago, and everything else in the vision has become accurate and actually come into being. But we haven't yet got a way of doing this, seeing the images in real time. So, tell your listeners, don't expect to come and see all these images.
Right.
But I don't think it's far off. We haven't got the technology to do it in real time yet, but it's there. It's coming. It's close. It's exciting.
Oh, it is very exciting. So keep me in mind. And I would love to help in any way, or to find a way to collect data that maybe might even help you write a book on it someday. So please keep in touch with me. And
let's do a Skype session.
Okay, we will.
Yeah, let's get together.
All right, Peta, thank you so much. And again, her book is called Ancient Teachings for Modern Times. Please check out her website. The book was great. And I'm going to book a Reiki session. So I think all of you should too. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Path 11 podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. Really, really nice to get together with you.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that show. And don't forget to head on over to path11tv.com, grab your annual membership for $59. Remember, that is 40% off the regular price. Once November 12th hits, the price is going to go back up to the regular price. So I really want you to take advantage of our launch deal of $59. You get over 75 hours of content that we have on there. And if you register now until November 11th, we are going to email you a private link to the Zoom gallery reading with Suzanne Northrup. And if you would like to watch Suzanne and see what she has to say before the gallery reading, you can tune in to Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or watch it on path11productions.com. She's going to be speaking for about 30 to 45 minutes on November 11th at 11 a.m. We're going to take a short break, and then you are going to head on over to your Zoom room and sit there in the gallery, and hopefully Suzanne will choose you and give you a private reading to connect with your deceased loved ones. So head on over to path11tv.com, take advantage of the annual membership. Remember, the monthly membership does not give you the Zoom link. You have to purchase the annual membership in order to get into the gallery reading Zoom room. All right, guys, take care.